Welcome one and all to Umami Manga. I'm Petter, and this is James.
Hello.
And today we're talking about Solanin, written and illustrated by Inio Asano from 2005 to 2006, and released as 2 volumes in Japan. This mangaka is perhaps mostly known for the manga that he did shortly after this one, called Goodnight Poon Poon. But Solanin seems to be his second most popular manga, at least to my understanding.
hmm
Goodnight Poon Poon has a reputation that makes me scared to read it. I'll just say
Yeah.
I have not read it, but I've just heard so
Likewise.
many things about, like, from people who have read it, that it's such a dark and downer story that I'm just kind of scared to start reading that one.
From what I've heard about it, it makes you question Asano's mental health in a way.
Yeah.
But I had heard about Poon Poon before Solanin, and so I was like, "What?
Hmm.
What in the world?" Because you would hear about some of the things that happen in that manga, and I just wondered like who would come up with that kind of stuff. But after reading Solanin and kind of understanding just this, I guess his style, I could kind of see where if he just let himself go off the rails and just kind of let loose, I can kind of see where it goes in a pretty
Hmm.
dark and disturbing areas.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is not about Poon Poon. This is about
No, but it is still worth bringing up because in case someone didn't know, like it is the same mangaka as Goodnight Poon Poon, but it was he wrote this one a few years before, and obviously it's a much shorter story. But it's I think it's a rather sweet one and something that I was unaware of until just earlier today, but that James brought to my attention is that Asano wrote an epilogue chapter to Solanin in 2018, which is like over a decade after having finished the main manga.
yeah, yeah.
And we will discuss that epilogue chapter, but we'll save it for the very end of this discussion. So if you haven't read that chapter, you are completely spoiler safe for pretty much all this discussion. We will give a warning before we go into that or discussing that chapter later.
Yeah. Let me just say before we get into it,
Uh huh.
there's a reason one of these works of his has a live action adaptation and the other one doesn't.
Which one does?
I'll let you take a guess
Uh,
as to which one
Oh,
does.
okay. Well, it's probably Solanin. I assume.
Yeah.
I didn't know that actually. That it had a live action adaptation. That's interesting.
Yeah, it does. It has a Japanese live action.
Huh.
I haven't seen it, but I looked at the trailer and thought it was pretty neat, and I want to watch
Interesting.
it because as I was reading it a second time, I thought, man, this would be really good as a movie if you got the right people to do it.
Hmm.
And I was actually thinking animated movie,
Right.
but a live action one I think would work very well as well.
I'm sure. I mean, obviously, yeah. We don't know. We haven't seen the movie, but I also
True, true.
imagine it would work really well. And I also had similar thoughts as you. Like an anime movie like of this based on this manga would I would love to see, especially for the music, which is a very
Yes.
important part of this story. But we don't
hmm
get to hear the music, and I think that's a shame. I would love to hear Solanin.
One of my favorite bands over the years does the music for Solanin.
Oh, really? That's
Um,
fun.
Asian Kung Fu Generation.
Ah.
Um, but I haven't listened to it yet. Maybe that's on me for not doing my homework. But supposedly they have a song called Solanin. I mean, you kind of have to if you're making the adaptation.
Right.
So yeah, so to me that sounds like a great choice. But
Nice.
yeah, either way, I think there's a great reason why this was adapted, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the discussion.
Sweet. But yeah, like very brief little background, at least from me regarding this manga. Just very quick. I read it about 5 years ago, my first time, because a friend of mine let me borrow their copy of it, and I've since bought my own copy. But at the time, I was 24 years old, which is just about the same age as the main characters in the story,
Whoa.
and I could relate to a lot, and still can relate to some
Mm,
of the things
hmm
in this story. And I think I'll go over some of that as we go through the character discussions. But
Mm.
it was special in a way to me at that time because it was really like I felt like I was almost one of the group kind of.
Yeah.
But I'm curious also like when or how did you come in contact with this manga?
Mine is a lot less dramatic or interesting. I literally was just at Barnes and Noble, or yeah, was it Barnes and Noble? And I just going around trying to find something to read, and I think I just saw Solanin on the shelf, and I looked it up to see if it was a decent rating, and it was, and so I grabbed it, and that's about
Nice.
it.
Sweet.
And it changed my life forever. No, it didn't. But I knew after I read it that this was I had already known Pender. This was only like 2 years or so ago that I did this.
Hmm.
And we had not talked about this at all, but I remember bringing up to him, "Hey, I just bought this manga, and it made me kind of think of you in a way." He's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, I've totally read that. That's so funny that you just picked it up."
Awesome.
It was around
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So then I think we both decided then, like, oh, we should probably do a one shot of this at one point.
Precisely, and now we're here. So I guess then, without further ado, let's dive into the character discussions here. And I think we should start with Meiko Inoue. I kind of love how frank she is a lot of the time,
Mm.
or I guess how true she is to herself, or like kind of about herself in general. Kind of, she admits to being a creature of consumer society who prefers store-bought bread and chocolates, for example. Like that's one of the early things where she's aware of who she is. Like she isn't the one
Mm-hmm.
to want to use her family's homegrown vegetables or anything like that. And like I don't know, it's fun.
I almost find that part of her to kind of be, I mean, yes, there's a bit of laziness to it, but also rejecting her farm girl background and
Right.
embracing the modern Tokyo era.
True.
Subconsciously, of course, but that was just kind of how a little bit how I read it. But also,
Yeah.
yeah, it's easier just to grab some bakery stuff.
No, for sure. And I think and like another thing about that, I think a lot of that frankness and I guess the realism that she has, it's rooted in some sort of negativity or cynical mindset, especially or at least early on in the story. Like she has some pretty ugly thoughts about some people, for example.
hmm I like how real she is. Not to not to automatically take one of the kind of her terrible traits, and be like, "Wow, that's me," but also sometimes people just get on your nerves, and you just kind of just, especially when you're younger, or when you're well, maybe more so happens when you're getting older and you become more cranky at the world. But I guess they're
Uh-huh.
kind of at an age where they are getting older, you
Well,
know.
well, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, the mid 20s is a huge time of change for a lot of people.
Yeah, right. And so I think being upset at people in situations and things like that is a totally normal reaction,
Yeah.
and to not have those feelings. I mean, yes, some people can be purely sympathetic to everybody and not be annoyed at anything. But I do think it's pretty normal to have grievances and annoyances and things like that. And sometimes you
Hmm.
just don't really see that in the stories that we tell because it's an
Precisely.
ugly side of things.
Yeah, right. And it's like it's stuff that we usually keep to ourselves. Like it just exists within our heads. And I mean, yeah, I'll also admit, like to having had moments where I felt very similarly, like annoyed with the world at large, kind of just had a bad day and just kind of had very,
hmm
ugly thoughts about people, which obviously I would never say outright. And it doesn't
Yeah,
stick around usually very, very long, but still, it is relatable.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And to be fair, some of the people that she was having her complaints about kind of deserve it. I mean, her boss
Yeah,
is
yeah.
terrible.
Oh yes, for sure.
Her coworker is definitely just one of those people that He has such a punchable face, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I would ever do that, of course, but anyway, just
Yeah.
I think Asano is also pretty good at creating these pretty big caricatures of uh certain personalities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's easy to get into her shoes and be like, yeah, the people around you suck.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I noticed in regards to her character development throughout the story, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in depth as this
Hmm.
continues, but was that in the first couple of pages or so of the manga, she claims that adults are made of who cares, and she lists a couple of
Mm.
examples of things like that. And among those examples is, she says, there's war, famine, disease, and thousands of people are dying, but as long as I'm happy, who cares? So I thought it was kind of funny how in the last few pages of the whole manga, she says this: there's a war being fought today, many people are being killed, but it's hard to believe that kind of thing is happening when you look at this peaceful scene. I thought it would be nice if it went on forever.
Mm.
It's kind of like she has become one of those who cares adults by the end of the story in a way.
Hmm.
Um,
In a way, yeah.
but I think there's more to it than that. But I think to a degree she has become that. But it's also her having accepted that ordinary life isn't necessarily the wrong way to live. Or like
Mm.
I
Hmm.
I guess I think that's part of it.
Well, I think this kind of connects to one of the opening lines. I mean, it's not like the very first line, but it's in the first chapter. There's a demon lurking in Tokyo,
Uh-huh.
and that that demon, while it's not mentioned very often, it does come back in various ways. And through my second read through, I tried to think about what this demon is exactly, and I have a feeling that it's up to the reader's interpretation in some way.
Mm.
I can't say for sure it's what Asuna was trying to get at, but my interpretation of this demon is basically giving up. Now hear me out.
Mm.
There comes a point in some people's lives that they feel like they have to give up on their dreams, right? And that seemed to kind of be the one of the themes of this story. And to me, it felt that this demon inside them was fighting against that,
Oh.
not wanting to settle for a desk job, not wanting to, just have the ordinary life. There's more for me out there, and not wanting to accept that maybe you're not one of the greats.
Mm.
Um, and I feel that demon is what kind of propels the characters, particularly Meiko and Naruo, to do the things that they end up doing in the story. And at the very end, I think Meiko's able to accept that demon and almost exorcise it in a way.
Mm.
Um, by the very end, even though there's no like be gone demon or anything like that, but it does
Right.
feel that
Uh-huh.
that whole moment is or that concept is resolved by the very end. I feel
Right. Yeah.
that's how I interpreted it, though, at least
Uh-huh.
in a very probably confusing way. I'm so sorry, but
No, but
that's how I took it.
I think you made it clear enough. Uh, I actually hadn't thought that deeply into it exactly,
Hmm.
but I really like your interpretation. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and I also thought it was interesting that it seems those rabbit keychain things
Uh-huh.
that kind of became their band logo or whatever
Mm-hmm.
seem to represent, in my mind, represent that demon.
Yes. Yeah, I did feel like that as well. Like they became like the avatar for that demon or
Yeah.
something like that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah.
That concept.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
probably the biggest impact this manga had on me back when I read it initially, what was that it became part of the reason why I ended up quitting the job that I had 5 years ago, in order to just live free for 2 whole years. Uh, because I'd been working at a job for 4 years, and I was starting to feel maybe a little bit like Meiko did, before she quit.
Mm-hmm.
Not maybe not to that exact extreme, but sort of along those similar lines. And over those 4 years of working, I had managed to somehow save up rather a lot of money, even though it wasn't like a great paying job or anything. But I had money, and I had a desire to be free, and so I quit that job, and I quit it in the summer of 2020, and lived without neither studying nor working for 2 years.
Mm.
Half a year into that free time or whatever, was when we started Umami Manga, this podcast. So that became one of the things that I gave my time to. Obviously, like for the first year and a half of Umami Manga's existence, I could give a lot of time to this podcast, and so I didn't get bored the way Meiko did, of that
Yeah.
free time, because I had the podcast, I had the band that I played with at the time. Uh, Plus, I started to like get a bit into drawing and Final Fantasy 14, among other things. Like I definitely could fill my days with activities, but it was definitely partially the reason why I did that thing, which in hindsight feels like a bit of a crazy thing to just for 2 whole years not really do anything like work or study. Um, I guess, but I could do it, so I did it, and I don't regret it.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that time. I thought that was pretty cool
Thank
that
you.
you had that free time in a way. The
Mm,
time to for yourself, the time to,
yeah,
you know, do the things that you really want to do without worrying too much about where your food is coming the next day.
yeah.
I shouldn't say too much, but
Uh-huh.
you had money in the bank, right? So,
I did.
but did you ever feel at some point that your expiration date was determined by your bank account? Did you ever feel that way?
I did, and because it was,
I
um,
like that line
and
in the story, by the way. I thought that
it's
was pretty
great,
well
yeah,
done. Yeah.
for sure. Because I didn't know exactly how long I would be able to live like that. I tried to like do some calculations, and like I knew I could probably make it for over a year without too too much trouble. But I do remember the last, like the second year of it, especially like the latter half, the economy was definitely tighter toward the end,
Mm-hmm.
when I realized, okay, it's running low, and I don't really want this to end quite yet. So I didn't spend quite as much money near the end of that, but yeah, no, it was still good throughout. And now it's been 2 years since that freedom ended for me. but uh but yeah.
Yeah. So, what did you think about her reasons for quitting and, getting that freedom? Because it kind of dances around some of the reasons why. We touched on her, having freedom, just, not being part of the system and not conforming to a normal life per se. But then there was also the idea that I think her friend I brought up was that she was trying to put pressure on Naruo.
Precisely.
How do you interpret that, or what do you think about that?
I didn't think that Mako did that, or at least not for that reason consciously. Maybe not even subconsciously. I don't know. I think I
Hmm.
seems like much more of a direct person in a way, or in that kind of a way, compared to Mako.
Because Mako's pretty direct, as we've
She,
established.
she she absolutely can be, but I don't think she's direct in the same way as I is. Like,
Hmm.
we learned that Meiko and Naruo had never, like, supposedly never had any like serious discussions throughout their 6 year long relationship. Like they'd never tackled those difficult conversations, supposedly.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess in that way, Meiko is not that that frank, even though she absolutely can be frank in other ways, I guess.
Yeah, I feel that it wasn't a conscious push by her, but I do think it was subconscious. I do think part of her was trying to give him a nudge in some way.
Mm,
I don't know what she was trying to get the nudge for. I know that I know or I think it's pretty evident that she wanted him to start the band again. But
that's
would
true.
quitting her job do that per se? I guess it did, kind of.
It did. Well, it did because she actively urged him to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think she could have still been working in order to do that, maybe? Or, well, not necessarily, I
Well,
guess.
maybe maybe if she had still been working, he wouldn't have felt that he could go do the band because he would maybe feel that he was mooching off her more than he should be.
Mm,
But with her not being the breadwinner, now there's pressure to for him to become to get a full-time job or something like that. But also it also meant that his time frame to do anything is suddenly shrunk
yeah.
shrunk shrunken it's much smaller
Yes.
and it's now or never almost. So maybe that's what subconsciously Mako was trying to get at per se. I don't know.
Absolutely could be.
I don't necessarily think it's bad of her at all.
No.
I think like any couple they were going through growing pains, and like you said they really didn't have too many serious conversations. They had little fights here and there, which is normal.
Yeah.
But I think that this is just signs of her and Naruto trying to navigate their relationship together, what they really want
Hmm.
with their lives and each other. So uh, it certainly was a big turning point for them. Um, but I also don't think Mako should blame herself for anything that had happened after that.
Oh, for sure not. No. No. But it is true that Meiko quitting her job is really what caused this entire story in a sense, because
Yeah,
everything that happens after, more or less, are reactions to her quitting the job.
yeah,
But I do still think it's kind of crazy that they supposedly had never had a difficult conversation
yeah.
for like a 6 year long relationship. They must not have communicated very well. And honestly, I think there's there's a couple of signs in the present story also that shows that their communication is not great. Obviously, they've still made it work. So like, props for that. But I don't think they were ever really communicating as well as they should have or could have during their
Mm-hmm.
time together.
Yeah. And I don't know how long they were doing their work schedule where she was working the day and he was I guess working at night with his part-time thing. I'm not actually sure what the hours were, but
Right.
it seemed like they were barely overlapping in the morning, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in the evening,
Fair.
but they
Yeah.
didn't give much time to to talk.
That's true. Mm.
It's basically what you're trying to say is this all could have been resolved if they had had a chat before.
Well, I think for the whole like 6 year relationship, I think if their communication had been better, maybe things could have gone differently.
Yeah.
Obviously, though, to be fair, I think their love was still strong throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Like from beginning to end, they loved each other. So I think this is an
Mm-hmm.
interesting love story in the way that it's depicted, 6 years into the relationship, and it's not about finding love, which a lot of love stories are about, but it's about a love that's just kind of staying or sticking around, and it shows the challenges of a relationship, and it shows the mistakes in a way of the participants of the relationship, but it also shows how strong the love is, because it is strong even though there are flaws
Mm-hmm.
in I guess their approach or how they communicate, as I've been saying. Like that's a big thing. I think they still love each other very, very much. So like obviously like I'm not I don't know if things could have been a whole lot better since they after all do still like the love is there.
Mm-hmm.
So who am I to criticize?
Yeah, I think it shows a facet of adult love.
Hmm.
Now, I agree with you that communication was something that they needed to improve on. But sometimes that's a thing that comes with maturity, and to say that they were, completely mature is not true. I mean,
Hmm.
we're learning as we're growing, and I think this kind of shows some of those learning pains, growing pains that they both experienced as they try to circumvent their life, working goals, and their relationship with each other. You wish it could have turned out better, and that they could have actually had a good conversation about it. But I do think that it offers a more realistic look at adult love life, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Although something that another thing that I think they thought was a bit strange
Mm-hmm.
was that 6 years into this relationship, Meiko still calls Naruo by his surname, Taneda, like
Yeah.
consistently, with one exception, and that time he got got an erection. Is like, uh, is I
Oh,
don't know. Like
Japan.
I get that in Japan is like the polite thing is to call people by their surname, but when you're in a relationship for 6 years, don't you usually call one another by your given names?
Yeah. I think it kind of shows the innocence and the naive naivete naivety of their love in that, yeah, they haven't moved on to first name basis yet, even after all these years. It almost feels as though they weren't ready to commit to each other because they felt
Hmm.
they weren't ready to uh accept that there wasn't more for them in life. Not to say that they wanted someone better or something like that, but more so they didn't want to conform with a normal life,
That's
or
true.
think that there is nothing beyond this. But by Taneda asking Meiko to say his first name, you could, besides being just a hilarious moment, you can make the case that that was another sign of him fully committing himself to her, um, and likewise her committing herself to him by saying the name. But maybe that's just me reading too much into a funny gag.
I don't know. No, but it could be.
But yes, I did. That is an excellent point that I didn't even think about, um, in the context of they've been together for so long.
Right.
But
It is
I
strange.
do think that it has something. It must have something to do with the fact that maybe there was something holding them back from being truly committed to this life. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to, in a way, I think both of them were trying to kind of halt them growing up or becoming adults. They,
Yeah.
so I can kind of see what you mean with like, although I guess he called her Mako, right? I don't remember now.
Good question. Yeah, we can always briefly look.
Yeah,
Yeah, he calls her Mako.
right. So
I'll be
yeah,
darned.
I don't know. So
Well, maybe she was the one though that was not committed to him. I don't know.
well, maybe she is the one who, and I guess I could see that. I suppose maybe she's the one who feels the strongest about, I guess, not advancing into adulthood as much,
Hmm.
and I guess being on first name basis with your partner is one of those signs, or could be seen as one of those signs as being mature and adult. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's a stretch, or maybe it boils down to their lack of communication again. Like
Yeah,
maybe they just never had the
that's a good point.
conversation about, hey, it's okay to call me Naruo all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really think that there's multiple examples of their relationship not being, I guess, 100% great, with the communication being, I think, the big thing. But also, like, at least Meiko wasn't telling her family about a lot of things regarding her 6 year long relationship with this guy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and supposedly she had a good relationship to her parents. So why wouldn't she tell them that she lives with her boyfriend that she's been dating for a long time at that point? Like that that was also kind of another strange thing. And so like all of these things make it seem like, or I guess one could make the point of it being a bad relationship, I suppose. Um, but I think one of the really clear signs that showed that it wasn't so bad, I guess, was when Naruto initially disappeared at first, and then a little after when he ultimately died, it became very apparent how much Mako loved him and how much, at that point, how much she misses him because she loves him. Like all of the different reactions and things that we saw from her after that had happened, I thought really showed and proved that their love was really strong, even though it had its flaws.
Yeah.
Another one of the signs, like aside from some of the more, I guess, apparent reactions and like things that we saw from Meiko after Naruto had died, another thing that I think really proved and showed her love for him was after her discussion, or after her talk with Naruto's dad. Meiko decided to honor Naruto's memory by learning to play the guitar and starting the band back up.
Mm-hmm.
And she practiced really hard and in the end managed to deliver what I assume was a pretty great performance.
Yeah, but that part doesn't really matter, you know, if it was good or bad.
No,
What really matters is that she was able to do it, and it really turns into a moving on moment for her.
absolutely.
A page turn, if you will.
Really. In a way, that's another thing that I can kind of relate to, like using music as a way to move on from difficult things in life.
Mm.
Because I've like, well, I mean, I do music, and although it's been a while since I wrote something new at this point, but I have been doing a lot of music throughout the years, I guess, and I there have been a couple times when I've written songs to kind of help me process various things that have been kind of tough, and it I feel like it's worked kind of, so I can kind of relate to that.
Yeah.
I like how it's also kind of symbolized even further with her, the injury on her cheek having healed on the same day when they had the concert.
Yeah.
I think that also kind of is another little metaphorical sign of her healing also mentally, you know.
Yeah. For sure. I love how she came to an understanding of what Solanin may have meant
Yeah,
to Taneda. That was nice, and finding the diary that he had bought for them. I love that kind of connection to that.
yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
just that little thing where they even stopped doing for a time, but then Asano brought it back. I think that was pretty smart of him,
For sure.
and yeah, it was a great way to help us understand what Solanin was really about, and because at first it sounded like it was a breakup song.
Precisely. I don't blame her for having interpreted it that way, because it
Yeah,
definitely
no, I
could have
mean
been.
it's hard not to. But I think what was written there and how she was able to interpret the song uh, changed the meaning, and maybe we can talk about that when we bring up Naruto. But I do want to say that I think Soranin became her moving on song, not just
Hmm.
you know with Naruto's death, but moving on with her life as an adult. Putting things aside, but obviously the main part of it is Naruto and saying goodbye to him. But I think it's also about moving on.
Absolutely. No, I agree. It is also, yeah, saying goodbye to her old self,
Yeah, yeah, her old life. Yeah.
for sure.
If this is America, I'd sue you.
I love that line. uh, Honestly, like we make that kind of jokes in Sweden as well.
Really?
We do, yeah.
That is so funny. That's so funny. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about Mako? I guess let me ask real quick. What did you think about her picking up the guitar so quickly and being able to, uh, whether good or bad, play this piece by someone who probably had been playing the guitar for around 10 years?
Well, er, well, I don't think she necessarily picked it up super quickly. Like, well, she did. I think it was kind of a fluke that she managed to, like, I guess, adjust the same settings on the amp kind of as Naruo used to have.
Mm-hmm.
And like when she struck that chord or whatever sound she made right then,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that necessarily
Mm-hmm.
sounded good. But the like just
Mm-hmm.
the settings, I think, was what the other guys reacted to. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then I don't know. You can probably look it up roughly how long she was practicing with them or rehearsing. But I don't know exactly
Mm-hmm.
how long that was off the top of my head.
I mean, it was a few months.
It still was a few months,
Not,
right? Yeah,
I don't think it was 6 months, but
but at least a few months, maybe,
yeah,
probably. So I
yeah.
can probably buy it. I don't think she's like a savant or anything like that, like at the guitar by the end of it. But she's able to play
Oh.
it well enough. I was picking up on like the chords that she was playing on a couple of
Mm-hmm.
panels, and like they're not advanced chords. So
Mm.
I think it might be possible that Naruo wrote sort of
Yeah, maybe
simple
they weren't that
songs.
complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, to a certain degree.
right, yeah,
Yeah. No, I mean, I was okay with it. I think that maybe it was a little quick, but you know, sometimes people can pick up things quicker, and she had more time to dedicate to playing, I'm sure, as I think she was only working part time
true,
at the flower place. So
precisely.
um, I know that when I was learning guitar, I was doing it in college, summer classes actually. So I only had like two classes every day. So I had plenty of time to just watch TV and play the guitar while I was doing it.
Mm,
And so I felt like I was able to pick it up fairly quickly. Very,
nice.
very basic stuff. Petter, very
Right.
basic
Well,
stuff.
still, I
But
mean,
I learned how to, finger strum and chords. I could play songs uh, decently. So
yeah,
if she was really going at it for however many months, then yeah, I could believe it.
for sure. Yeah, I guess the very last thing, and it's really kind of pointless, but it's just something that I want to point out because I think it's a little funny. As a Kaguya-sama Loves War fan, I couldn't help but just think about how similar the name Miko Ino is to the name Meiko Inoue. But that's really neither here nor there. But yeah, just similar names. That's funny to me.
Okay. Okay.
But
I
that's
guess I guess I shouldn't expect less from the Miko Ino stan.
no.
I get it.
uh, but yes, I suppose that's all on Meiko.
Yeah.
Then let's move on to Naruo Taneda. He freaked out a bit when he learned that their household wouldn't have a steady income anymore, even though he had kind of encouraged her, or he had straight up encouraged
hmm
her in his sleepy state.
Yeah. And I think that is interestingly, a wake up call for him to make a move, whether that be fully commit to this work he has here or try again with his music. And I think he comes up with a decent plan, a decent idea.
Right.
Make an album or make a CD, get it out there, take your shot, and if it doesn't work out, then move on from there. But it's hard to accept that. It absolutely is. And I know in my own experience, I went to New York to go into acting. I had an opportunity to do so. I was on an off Broadway show.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was fun. It was a good couple months living in New York, but I felt like it just wasn't the lifestyle for me, and I decided to go back to college. It was a hard choice to make, though. I was kind of giving up on my dreams, but I felt like it was the right one, and I definitely wouldn't be here if I hadn't made that choice. Who knows what I would be
Hard to know.
doing. I wouldn't have met the people I did, and eventually met Petter. I probably for sure would never have met Petter. I'll be honest. But yeah, so I totally understand, taking your shot and trying for it, and then being frustrated when it falls apart.
Understandable, for sure.
Or doesn't go the way you would hope. Like, falls apart is probably not the right word.
Yeah, or I mean, I guess yeah. The expectations.
The dream itself falling apart, sure.
Yeah.
Taking your shot and then it not working, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, because you can always take new shots.
You could.
If the passion and the dream stays alive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was going to give up on his music. I think he even said he would keep the band together, but he would be working full time, so he wouldn't be able to dedicate all his time to the band.
Well, no, I think he didn't he say that he would break the band up if it didn't.
No, but so that originally, yes, he said he was going to break the band up, but when he called Meiko, he said, "Hey,
oh yeah,
I was able to get my job full time.
Yeah,
I'm actually not going to break up the band.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to keep playing."
Right at that point, because he had kind of had a change of view and he taken those days to kind of think that like mull things over and whatnot.
Yeah,
but I do think putting the band back together was a really good move, like for everybody. Like obviously, the bass player and the drummer both wanted to play again. They just kind of needed Naruo to, I guess, instigate it.
yeah.
And I and Meiko were happy about it as well, even though they weren't part of the band. Like it felt like being back to like kind of how it used to be. So like, even though it didn't necessarily need or like lead to like fame or whatever, it was still a nice thing for everybody while it lasted.
This is a question that I just thought of, and it's kind of more about Meiko, but it does involve Naruto. Why do you think Meiko wanted so badly, or maybe I should say just deep down wanted Naruto to get the band back together? What about it was, or why was it so important to her in a way? Because she wasn't really part of that band. She supported them all the time, and that she talks about how she loved the way that he looks when they played. But surely it's not something as simplistic as I just like the way he looks when he plays,
No, I don't think it's quite that. But I do honestly like, because I hadn't thought exactly about this, but how you asking the question now, I think it's the fact that she loves him. She loves him a lot, and she knows him well enough to know that the band will make him happy. I think it's that.
Yeah, she wants to see him happy. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good answer. Good answer.
Thank you.
Show me wants to see him happy.
Great answer.
Um, I think another aspect could be that yes, seem happy, but also not give up on the dream.
Hmm.
I think she knows that was such an important part of him, uh, and she wants to support that. And maybe that comes back to the subconsciousness of her quitting her job and kind of pushing him. Maybe that all comes back to that. But
Hmm.
regardless, I do think it was all for all for his and her own selfishness, but for his benefit as well. Or at least what she believed would be good for him.
Yeah. And now let me ask you a question.
Okay.
So regarding Naruo writing the song Solanin,
Yeah.
as we were talking about before, Meiko initially interpreted it as a breakup song, but later on reinterprets it as a song about parting ways with one's old self, kind of instead. And obviously, it was Naruo who wrote it,
Mm-hmm.
so it's probably safe to assume that he drew from his own experiences and his own life when writing the lyrics. So, what part of himself do you think he is referring to in the song? Like, what part of him is he leaving?
I personally think it's the younger self dreaming about being a huge star, playing in front of this huge crowd,
Mhm.
um, having the great record deals. I think it's about that. And moving on from that, that was a great dream I had. That was a great time in my life, but it's time to move on. I found something that is precious to me, and
Yeah,
as his father says that Mako was, or I guess implies that Mako was the precious thing in Tokyo that he had.
yeah,
And I think that this song was kind of him coming to grips with that. And even though it took him running away back home to fully realize that, even after he had written the song, I think he was kind of forming that in his mind and coming to grips with it. Um, in a way. But it's hard. Like you put it to song, you put it to lyrics, you put it on paper. Does that truly mean that you accept it? I think
mm.
in Mako's case, she had to sing it, do a live performance of it
Yeah,
to accept what Solani meant to her, and maybe that would have been a similar case for Naruto, maybe,
maybe.
or it was him running away that ended up being the catalyst. I'm not sure, but anyway, that's how I interpreted it, and
Hmm.
that in and of itself is his demon that resided in Tokyo, or at least I guess maybe it wasn't Tokyo, maybe it was where was he from again?
Fukuoka.
Oh, Fukuoka. Thank you. Right, resided in Fukuoka. I don't know wherever it resided in. I think that was his demon.
Yeah, great answer.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of very similar lines to that I was thinking of as well. It's just such a damn shame that he died after suddenly seeming to be feeling better again.
Yeah, yeah. You know, uh, you really do feel for him, well, for all of them, and then and as they try to get over this. But
Mm-hmm.
um, when I first read it, I was pretty confused on why he had jumped the light like that. And it maybe confused is the wrong word. More like perplexed that he would be so emotional. It felt like that he was ready to go. What was holding him back? But I do think it was um, that dream of his that you know he felt. I mean, that feeling is hard. It's hard to just to give it up. Um, and I think to him, he had to leave it in Fukuoka in a way, and get back to his precious thing in Tokyo in order to not look back, not have regrets, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, he just got a little too antsy at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was emotional in a lot of different ways, kind of simultaneously there. I think what you're talking about is definitely the case, but also Also, I got the vibe that like it was like also like tears of joy, like feeling like his
Really?
life was turning around in a positive way and kind of relief about that. As a mixture with kind of the sadness of leaving part of yourself behind. That's how I read it. Just a lot of different emotions simultaneously.
Yeah.
And then having your eyes that full of tears while riding a motorcycle or a moped or whatever it was, um, it kind of makes you not able to see very well in traffic, and that's dangerous. So yeah, just very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And honestly, I had, or maybe I still have, slightly mixed opinions on the fact that his character dies.
Oh, really?
I don't know like yeah, some of what comes of it I do enjoy like in the story, but overall or at least to a rather big extent, part of me feels like his death was not necessarily needed in this story because I kind of feel like what this story is about is well, wouldn't necessarily have needed this. I don't know.
Mm.
What do you think?
You would hope that they would be able to reach the moment that Mako reaches in the end of letting her old self go. You would hope that she would be able to reach that even with Naruto by her side.
Right.
She never would have picked up the guitar,
No.
so it's hard to say that she would have came to the same conclusion, or should say, come to that conclusion in the same way. But yeah, I mean, I think that part of growing up is something that, well, first off, it's hard to avoid,
Hmm.
but also I think it happens. It happens, and or it could have happened with Naruto, but with her. Um,
Mm.
but that said, I think, as I was saying, I think that how it goes down would not have happened unless he passes away.
No, no, for sure. For sure. And like ultimately I'm not like opposed to that narrative choice. It's just I guess a part of me feels like maybe it was unnecessary, but obviously yeah, it would have been a bit different that way and obviously this is the way it went and I still enjoyed this story quite a lot. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I I don't ever want to imply that people need death to happen around them in order to change. That's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes a very impactful moment in life can encourage change to happen quicker,
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
in one way or another, whether good or bad. Like for some cases, it could be devastating, and
Absolutely.
some can never recover. So I'm glad Mako was able to do so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting point you made though, and I didn't I really didn't think that it was unnecessary.
Mm.
Um, to be honest, I kind of thought it was coming anyway. I was like, something sad is gonna happen.
Definitely. And like early on in the story, Naruo allegedly joked about committing double suicide with Meiko,
Yeah,
and at like
I
to
think
me
that may be like a genre.
yeah, it gave me the idea that he was struggling with his mental health at the time, and plus Meiko had already described him as sensitive,
Yeah,
so like the idea of him taking his own life was kind of there in my head from that point on. So I was kind of expecting that more than a an accidental death for him.
yeah, interesting.
So it did still shock me in that way, but I had expected him to take his own life, which would have been probably even sadder. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I feel the same way, and maybe that's on purpose by Asano, which I don't want to give him too much credit if that's not the case, but if it is, I mean, good job.
Uh-huh.
Because there's that moment where he runs out, or not runs out, he literally just walks out um, from Mako's apartment and disappears.
Yeah.
He doesn't contact her. It's like 5 days or something, or maybe longer than that. I can't remember.
Hmm.
But I remember getting the feeling, wait, did he die? He kind of disappeared here. And I don't know if originally I thought it was suicide or not, but that certainly could have been a possibility. And maybe that's what he was, trying to trick us into thinking. Maybe,
Yeah, I mean that was definitely something that I was thinking.
yeah,
I remember clearly when I read this the first time 5 years ago. I remember thinking that, yeah, okay, that's probably what happened during those 5 days.
then ring, ring, ring. I'm still alive for 30 more minutes,
Eh,
maybe.
gosh, yeah,
Yeah, terrible. But yeah, no. So good. I guess good writing, maybe in that sense. I like
yeah,
being able to get in the mind of the reader and kind of mess with them in some ways. And I guess if I understand what happens in Poon Poon, I guess he's pretty good at
supposedly, yeah.
that.
uh, yeah, but after the disappointment at the record company, which they probably went to that meeting with rather high expectations, but left it quite disappointed. Um, and realizing also kind of in the days that followed that they weren't getting any other responses from anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's totally understandable that Naruo got a bit down on life kind of in the days that followed there. And while on the boat,
Yeah.
when he was on the boat with Meiko, he suggested that they break up, and he also brought up the idea of he was thinking of going back to Fukuoka and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he even there was also a point there when he kind of snapped at Meiko rather unfairly, in my opinion. And I think he realized that too after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
because they made up pretty quickly, seemingly there, and went back home together and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's where the interesting thing about his kind of, I guess, the plot twist regarding Naruo came, where it seemed like he was leaving, or at least to me, seemed like he was leaving to take his life. He wasn't feeling that great after all. But that wasn't the case. He actually was, decided to take control of his life again and turn it around and whatnot. But that is another instance where their communication was severely lacking. Like he should have told her what he was thinking. He shouldn't have just left without saying anything for leave and being gone
No,
for
no,
five
he
days.
shouldn't.
He should have said, I need a couple of days to myself to mull things over and turn my life around because I have a good feeling about things, but I just need to get some things sorted out. That would have been a lot better.
Yes, I agree.
uh,
I agree. I mean, you have the whole excuse of his phone being no good, so he wasn't able to contact. But
yeah.
like you said, he should have just said something before up and leaving. Um,
Yeah.
but I get that goes to show that he is an immature person at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you're in a relationship like that, you have to be thinking about your partner as well.
For sure.
Um, it's kind of the commitment you make. But yeah, I mean, I again I chalk it up to mistakes of youth,
Yeah.
and also someone who's very depressed at that point.
For
Um,
sure. I mean, yeah, for sure. He was struggling.
but agreed, communication would have been key here.
Oh, yes. But you got anything else on Naruto?
There was a moment where he says, towards the beginning, about he can't see who he is without comparing himself to others.
Yeah.
I think that's real.
Oh, yes.
It's hard not to go through life without comparing yourself to others, and that's something you have to learn, almost train yourself. I don't know if you can ever quite get over it. I'm sure some people are better at it than others. And maybe some people are the ones that are compared to rather than comparing themselves.
Right.
um, but you could also make the argument that everyone being is being compared to in some aspect.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that line, and I think that for someone who is trying to get in the music industry or performance and things like that, it's very easy to compare yourself to how others' career are going.
Absolutely.
But not just entertainment, but any sort of business field or work field can be that way as well. So
True.
I guess it's important to accept that, but also learn to overcome that in some aspect, and that's easier said than done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing I want to mention about him is we already touched on it briefly when he asks Meiko if they can break up, and he says, "I'm going to move to Fukuoka. I don't want to put you through that." What did you think about that? I know he was super depressed, but was there any sort of good intentions with that, or was it all just him feeling sorry for himself? I don't know. I guess maybe this point is moot, but I thought that it was almost a cry for help in a way,
Yeah.
but obviously, well, I guess it just goes back to communication, really, like really expressing how you feel.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could also make the argument why didn't he just ask her to come to Fukuoka with him? It's not like she had a job or too much of a life in Tokyo.
Right. She doesn't. And she had, at least in her own narration earlier on in the story, she had told us readers that the only reason she was in Tokyo was because her boyfriend was there.
Yeah,
Though at the same time she was kind of against the countryside life, I guess.
true, true.
But as far as what he was feeling and thinking in that moment, I think really kind of similar as to what you were saying, he was just feeling so down that he wanted to distance himself.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of what it could have been. A lot of people, a lot of guys especially, are really bad at talking about their emotions.
Hmm.
I think Naruo is one of those guys.
Hmm.
And that I mean, and that was part of the reason why I was so kind of hung up my first time on the idea that he would eventually commit suicide, is because when you just bottle all those emotions up inside and you don't vent about it, you don't talk about it, you don't get help about it,
Hmm.
it sadly can result in suicide a lot of the time, or sometimes. Uh,
Mm. Yeah.
and that's kind of what I was expecting, and that's sort of because it is a lot of the signs that he's showing, and that this scene is one of those instances. It kind of seemed like that to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, like if that scene hadn't gone the way it did, like if she hadn't responded in the ways that she did, then maybe something darker would have happened to him. Like he could have died anyway, but he could have died a different way.
That's an excellent point. I didn't even think about what if she had got upset, said, "Fine, let's break up," and
Yeah,
it all happens.
right.
Would he have gone over the deep end?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess figuratively, not literally into the river.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's a very very insightful. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you for asking that.
That's all I have on Naruto.
Alrighty, then let's dive into the smaller characters, I suppose. And I'd like to start with Jiro Yamada, aka Rip, the drummer in the band.
Rip.
It's a
When
cool
he
name,
ripped
but imagine,
his
like, yeah,
pants.
right, for that reason when you were a kid, and like for it to stick through, like, supposedly your whole life. And yeah. But it's a cool name. Just the sound of it is fine. But knowing the reason is very funny.
Yeah.
He is one of my favorite characters.
I agree.
Probably actually my second favorite character after Meiko.
Do I agree? I might agree. I do really like him.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we learned that he's been crushing on Meiko for a while, but being the good guy that he is, because I think he really is, he never acted on that crush due to Meiko already being with Naruo.
And touching on that, even after Naruto's death,
Yeah.
he doesn't, try to make her feel better by dating her or anything like that. He really acts as a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
There's one scene that is maybe my favorite scene besides the Solanin ending song, is when they're outside under the full moon and they're just crying and said, this is the last time, so just let me cry right now.
I know.
And they're just both just bawling.
Oh.
And it is such a real moment.
It really is.
That it doesn't feel make believe or it feels like this is how someone would process their emotions.
I know.
At that time.
It's so good. I also wanted to bring up that scene because it really affected me as well. And how Rip claimed that he's not sad, but obviously he was, and like kind of the denial about how he was feeling, and the fact that they got to cry out about it together, I think was also really needed for the both of them.
Yes, I agree. And that shows how good of a friend he was at that moment. And despite the feelings I'm sure he still carried with him, he knew it wasn't the time, and it just maybe it wasn't meant to be.
Right.
And I like that. I like that Asano didn't try to force that.
Absolutely.
Which, honestly, I kind of felt like it was going to happen because I felt something bad. And I say going to happen at the beginning of the story, not after Naruto died. I didn't think that was going to happen. But at the beginning of the story, I thought, okay, I could tell he's crushing on her, and then obviously it became obvious.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe something could happen there. If this was a different story, maybe the love couple would have broken up and then this would have happened. But I'm glad that's not the direction it went in, and
Same.
Telling an entirely different story.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it really just, I think, proves how strong their friendship is, Rip and Meiko.
Yeah. And I'd argue Rip and Naruto as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Like his friendship with Naruto, he respects Naruto and Meiko's relationship so well that he doesn't make a move like that.
Right, and like by that point, like Meiko and Rip had been friends through Naruo, but still, like, or that they got to know each other through Naruo, but they became friends and have been friends for years.
True.
And like, so they know each other really well, and obviously, like, I think from Rip's perspective, he knows Meiko's well enough to know that he shouldn't make those moves. Unlike another character who doesn't know her well enough to not make those moves.
Yeah. He's a kid.
Yeah. But yeah, is that all on Rip?
He said he felt like a coward for not breaking free from his simple, comfortable life, but still finds joy in it. And I think at the end he brings it up again, and he says, "Yeah, I think there's joy in my simple life." And I really like the moment with the somewhat senile grandpa.
Yeah.
Kind of expressing gratitude for just the little things that he was doing.
Mm-hmm. So sweet.
Almost kind of emphasizes, treasuring the little things in life, little acts of kindness, and that sort of junk.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, that was a very nice little side plot.
Yeah.
Then let's move on a bit to Kenichi Kato, the bass player in the band. And he's got a weakness to beautiful women. Honestly, if I was his girlfriend, I would probably not be able to stand being with him. Uh,
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Like, he's not necessarily weird per se, but I don't know. You're right. He does seem to be somewhat of a sleazeball, but
yeah.
I don't know.
I think, I mean, I'm sure he's a great friend. I don't think he's a great boyfriend.
Yeah, I could see that.
And after losing Naruo, and by extension the band, Kenichi kind of started to very seriously hunt for jobs,
Yeah.
which was an unexpected turn, but an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it was part of his way to cope with it, I guess.
Right.
He needed a good distraction.
Yeah. Well, as we said earlier, huge life moments like that can cause big life changes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was the catalyst there, or part of the catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Took him 6 years to graduate. That's pretty. And we're not talking like medical school or anything like that. We're talking repeating his senior year, I guess, over and over again.
Seems like it, yeah.
You know, Kato and I weren't really the focus of the manga. I thought it would have been interesting to have explored their relationship a little bit more.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
but they certainly weren't the focus, like I said, and it was only 2 volumes in Japan, so I I don't I didn't expect every character to get full details, but
No.
I think it would have been nice to get more from them. That's all for Kato from me.
And for Ai Kotani as well?
She abuses not loyal boyfriend. So
She does.
you know what? You know what's interesting about this manga, and it's not the first time people have called a story, whether an anime or a TV show or something, a story about terrible people. It does kind of feel like this is a story about terrible people.
Yeah.
This is the Seinfeld of manga.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know if I'll go that far, but it they have some pretty obvious quirks
Mm-hmm.
in some way, particularly the men. I guess Mako has
Right.
her quirks as well that I think people
Absolutely.
would probably call toxic.
Mm.
If they're being harsh.
Yeah.
And I guess Eyes is that she'll not stray away from hitting her partner, if he deserves it. Totally.
Right.
But like obviously he has those moments of, I don't know if it's infidelity if you go that far, but certainly not being loyal. So do you justify the physical abuse that way?
Yeah, I mean, right. Yeah, right.
But
It's
I could also chalk it to being early 2000s. It's just a different time.
indeed. But yeah, no, obviously violence is never the answer. But
No, but yeah. So even I had her, I guess, terrible moments.
right.
But but of all the friends, she does seem to be the most put together.
Yeah.
In some aspects, and not just because she had a job actually, but anyway. I still think she was a good friend for Meiko as well as the other guys, and I'm glad she was there in the story. But like I said, it would have been nice to have more Kato and I stuff, and
it would.
that's it.
Then let's talk a little bit about Ohashi, the 18-year-old boy with a big crush on Meiko. And he is very cringe at times.
Yep. He's an 18-year-old.
He's a very accurate 18-year-old. Put 0 and 0 together and create infinity.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's doing that, during a sunset or whatever, and he's crying. Man, I put so much thought into this one.
Oh, it's so funny. Oh boy.
I mean, you can't help who you fall in love with.
No, no,
Um,
for sure.
and he knows his type, I guess. But I also don't blame Meiko at all for not wanting to get roped into that.
No. Even though he reminded her of Naruo.
Yeah, and in a way, I think it was good that she got away from that,
Yeah.
even if there was reminiscence. You could argue maybe not have been best for her own mental growth if she had
Right.
done that.
Yeah, right. Precisely. It's probably not ideal, perhaps, in that situation to find a partner who is like too similar to your previous one, maybe.
Yeah.
I haven't got any notes for any other characters, so if you do, go for it.
Okay. Saiki Ryutaro, the former indie band member that Naruo remembers, uh, kind of inspired him. And then, in a poetic way, Saiki was inspired by Naruo to go in a different route when it comes to the publishing music or producing music, I should say.
Yeah,
Um, and I thought that was very special.
absolutely.
And I think that was great for Mako to hear as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's all the characters I have.
Alrighty. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the various messages that we picked up on from this manga, and or at least the ones that were the strongest to us. To me, it's probably the message of understanding that there's nothing wrong with being ordinary, or at least that's one
Ah,
of them,
yeah.
and that even when life is far from perfect, it can still bring, I guess, miraculous joy when spent with the right people. I think those types of messages are kind of what I picked up on the most, or in that resonated with me the most.
Hmm.
What about you?
So there's this saying in English: "Don't cry that it's over, smile that it happened."
Hmm.
And I think this story takes that and says, "Do cry that it's over, but smile that it happened as well."
Ah.
So I think it shows that it's okay to have emotional connect with something, and
Hmm.
letting go of something can be very emotional, can be hard, and it's okay to cry about that. But also it's okay to look back and smile on life and
Yeah.
what we've become, and what we've done in our past and what we wanted in our past and things like that. And I think with Solanin and her performance of the song, we see that as she's on stage, she's very emotional, crying. I don't. Was she crying on stage? I can't. I think so, right?
Not sure. She was sweating.
She was sweating. Uh, but she did cry earlier.
Oh yes.
But I guess I just say. I guess I just say maybe it's scream that it's gone, and smile that it happened, because that right after that, after she let all that out, she's asleep smiling, finding peace.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's one thing I took from it, besides the letting go and moving on.
Nice.
I think it's also about adult angst and trying to figure your life out.
For sure.
It's probably easier for some than it is for others, although I'll never try to downplay anybody's growth and maturity into adulthood.
Hmm.
It's different for everybody, but I think this volume, or the volume, this book shows that it can be hard. Like there are growing pains, in ways that maybe we don't always think about, um, as we make career choices, as we say goodbye to the dreams we had, but also realize what's truly important to us, and maybe accepting that what's important to us can change, and when it does change, maybe it's important to move on from those other things. Um, although I think this is my own interjection. I think it's okay to have uh, multiple passions, multiple uh, loves in life in a way.
For sure.
But I also do think it's important to be committed to something um, wholeheartedly, particularly when it comes to relationships and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely.
Not so much about a theme, but I could see some people not liking this.
Yeah.
Maybe they feel the characters are too wishy-washy. They don't agree with the choices they make, etc.
Or maybe they want like a clearer plot.
A clear plot, yeah.
As you said, this is Seinfeld, which is a show about nothing.
Yeah, yeah. It's also philosophical.
Yeah.
Philosophical in a way that it's not really trying. Well, it does. It does have a message. It does have a message, but it also is not trying to force said message down the reader's throat.
It's not particularly preachy about it. Like,
yes, oh yes, I totally agree with that.
mm.
It kind of reminds me of a one-shot manga discussion we had about planets, where that one can be a bit preachy,
Yeah,
but it also is not necessarily clear on what sort of philosophical message it's trying to get across in some ways.
true.
It's very much up to interpretation, and just putting out philosophy for the reader to ponder.
Right.
And so it's very interesting that we have these beginning stories of renowned artists that are philosophical, and then they go on to create work that seems to be very impactful, one in a different way than the other, but I like that the comparison between Asano and Yukimura.
Absolutely.
In that way.
Definitely, yeah. So, speaking of liking or not liking this manga, how much do you like it? How would you rate it on a scale from 1 to 10?
So I have it currently rated on my anime list a 7. And I was tempted at the end to bump it up to an 8, but I think I'm going to keep it at a 7. If there was a 7.5, I'd put it at a 7.5. But
Gotcha.
I'll keep it at 7 for now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I guess since I mentioned it, I like it better than Planets. I do.
But you gave them the same score, is that right?
I think I gave Planets a 6, didn't I?
Maybe you did. I don't fully remember.
You're supposed to keep track of these things better. Anyway, I only bring that up because I had just barely compared them, but
right.
Yeah, I gave it a 6. But
Gotcha.
I think this one I enjoy better and can grasp more of the messages I think that Asano is trying to convey.
That's fair. I mean, it is a very, like, thanks to it being so short, I think, or at least partially, it is well planned. Like, it's clear to me that Asano knew what story he was going to write when he started it.
This is true.
He knew how it was going to go. He knew how it was going to end. And thanks to that, it is very neatly put together, like, as a package, the entire story from start to finish. And I think that's easier to do when it is a shorter story.
I agree.
Obviously, Planets, I think, is the same thing. Planets was also short. But anyway.
It does feel like a prolonged one-shot. Yes, it had chapters released, but it feels like the entirety is just one very long chapter in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
So what is your ranking?
My ranking of it is lower than my ranking for Planets. I believe I rated Planets an 8 out of 10. I think Solanin is great. It's a 7 out of 10 for me. A solid 7.
Yeah. Now here's what's interesting. We're both giving this a 7.
Yeah.
But usually our 7s are different in the way that I think if you give something a 7, I think to me that's usually like an 8 or something
I
like
I
that.
think something like that. Basically, I'm a little bit more, or usually anyway. I'm a bit more reserved with my ratings of things.
Mm, yeah. It's very interesting that we both give this a 7, and not only that, you have planets at 8, I have planets at 6. It's just like very very interesting, but
It is. I guess it is a bit unusual, maybe, for us.
yeah. But again, planets is a separate story,
Mm.
separate thing. So it's just they only have the similarities in terms of philosophy and a short run uh, serialization, I guess. Although
Yeah,
planets was longer.
it was about twice as long.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, that's interesting.
Very well. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about this manga before we move on to talking about the epilogue chapter?
No, actually.
Then let us do that. And so, spoiler warning for chapter 29, or whatever it's really called, the new chapter that came out in 2018. You have been warned. So yeah, that chapter, funnily enough, as I just said, like I just learned about it today, so that was a very fun surprise. I'm very glad that you notified me about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I just happened to cross it when I first read Solanin, because I was looking it up to see if it was worth reading, and I saw that there
Mm,
was an epilogue chapter
right.
somewhere lurking around. So I wanted to make sure I read it somehow.
Awesome. So just like in the main story, the epilogue chapter opens with a package being delivered, which I think was a nice little way for it to mirror the main manga.
Mm.
Though this time it's not a box full of vegetables, but an engagement ring.
Mm.
And Meiko is pregnant. So there's a lot of things happening in her life currently,
Yeah,
which is very fun.
yeah,
And
yeah.
like it's like she like if the main manga didn't make it clear enough, this epilogue absolutely makes it clear that Meiko has been able to move on with her life by now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
obviously she still thinks of Naruo, like that's inescapable, but she has moved on and she is happy, and that's awesome to see. I really
right.
like that.
Yeah. And I really like that, as you said, she still thinks of Naruto. Like she even thinks if I had changed my choice at that moment, if I hadn't quit my job, would things have been differently? And I think she may even say that they probably would have been. Um,
Yeah.
but those thoughts aren't bogging her down. It's more so just part of her. And I like how she's kind of accepted that, and um, as you said, has moved on. And yeah, I think it's great. Very very happy, and
Hmm.
I think that it shows her maturity level, where she's at. It does give you a little bit of a scare when you find out she's gonna be quitting her job. It's like, oh, some things never change.
I did like
Psych,
that.
I'm gonna have a baby. So
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty clever.
Absolutely. And I think the epilogue managed to elevate the message that ordinary life can be exciting and fun.
Yeah.
Like that was there in the original story too, but I felt like it was apparent in a new way in this chapter
Mm-hmm.
with very clearly showing Meiko being excited about her future and about her and about her current life.
Right.
That was very nice.
So were Ai and Kato married yet, or were they? I didn't think I saw a ring, so
Right. No, I
I
don't
don't.
think I paid attention to that either. They were supposedly still together though, so that's nice.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a nice little extra chapter. Not necessarily necessary, but I liked it. I'm glad that it exists.
Yeah, I think I saw some people say in comments that, "Oh, I'm so glad I read this with the epilogue.
Oh,
Would
really?
have been very disappointing without it." I was like, "What?
Really? Huh. That's interesting.
How so?" Like, I don't. maybe it's because I had without and
Yeah.
at first, and then like a couple of days or so later, I read the epilogue, or I don't remember how soon after I read it, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like it's a good ending. It's bittersweet, I suppose, but I think it's a satisfying ending.
It absolutely is. I mean, I went 5 years without this epilogue chapter, and I was very content still.
Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure what some people may be meaning by that, but
Hmm.
I'm glad that this epilogue shows her in a great place and how far she's gone. And another thing I like about this epilogue is that we can compare Asano's mindset in a way from when he drew Solanin to 2018 when he did the epilogue. And I feel that maybe was a tad more cynical and you know struggling with maybe some of the thoughts that the people the characters in the manga were,
Mm-hmm.
because he even says in the afterword that he was feeling a bit insecure about the ability to succeed as a manga artist,
Yeah.
and he was having his own anxiety and patience and almost some of the exact feelings that the characters were feeling themselves.
Right. Plus, he was at that age that the characters are, as well.
Exactly. And then you get to the epilogue, and Meiko is looking back on her 24, 25-year-old self and almost almost is kind of cringing at it in a way. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
I think she even says that some of her worries at the time were a little bit silly.
Yeah.
And I think you could argue that maybe Asano looks back on it and feels somewhat similarly.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice, and I also appreciate how he allowed the characters to age with the real time, like because it's more or less the same amount of
True.
years that passed IRL as passed in the manga world
Yeah.
there, which is also really nice, and it's almost like Mako lived along with Asano, maybe in a way, him having created her that character,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I obviously I don't know for sure, but I could imagine perhaps that that character kind of stayed with him through the years,
Mm.
and that eventually he felt like just tying her up or tying up her character story just ever so slightly more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sweet.
Yeah. No, I liked it. I one other thing I'll add is I like that she doesn't end up with any of the guys from the original story.
Yeah,
It's
same.
totally a different dude.
Precisely.
If it would have been Rip, I wouldn't have been too upset. I'd be like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But if it would have been Ohashi, whatever his name is, I would have been livid. I'd be like, what the freak?
Yeah.
Come on. Okay, livid is not the right word, but I
No.
would have I would have been a little bit
Right. No, but
questioning.
this the way it is, I think, is the best outcome, and I'm also very happy with it.
Yeah.
Lovely. So we just got done listening real quick to the song Solanin by Asian Kung Fu Generation.
Yeah. Definitely a product of its time in terms of the sound.
Oh, for sure.
Sounds like it's straight out of the 2000s. But
Well, I mean, it's supposed to, like, because it's
yeah.
obviously the manga, is from 2005, 2006, and I'm assuming it's supposed to take place in present day from when it's written.
Yeah.
So yeah, that,
I
that was
I
fitting.
totally agree. Yeah, I thought it was. It I wanted to watch the movie so I can hear what Mako sounds like singing it. I
Oh
imagine
yeah,
they would have that
that
scene.
would be. I mean, yeah,
Um,
they really should.
they really should.
Hmm.
This group is inaccurate though. They have four members. There's only supposed to be three. So I don't know what Asian Kung Fu Generation was thinking there, but
How
I'm
dare.
kidding. How dare they not be accurate? But yeah, I like it. I think it was a good emotional representation, especially the end there when he was saying sayonara.
Hmm.
I thought that was a good emotional moment that kind of encapsulates what maybe Taneda would be feeling as he's singing that song, and then I would hope Meiko would be like as she's singing it.
Precisely. Yeah. Very nice. Very fitting. It's like I can definitely imagine that like to the characters or like to the manga.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, now I want to go watch the live action for sure.
Actually, yeah, we should. Or yeah, that would be fun to see that kind of take on it. Yeah. Very well.
All right.
This was very chill and nice and fun. But I believe we are done for now.
For now, I mean, I don't think we're gonna be talking about Solanin for ever.
Unless there's like another epilogue, even for like 10 years from now.
Oh boy.
But probably not. Very well. If you enjoy our content, you can follow us on Twitter at Umami Manga, and it would be lovely if you'd like to support us by rating our show on the podcast platforms and subscribing to our channel Umami Manga on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time when we'll talk about something else. Bye bye.
See you later.
Ciao, baby.